Okay, Craig. So we talked about your snooker career and your sort of early forays into horse race betting and stuff. But now we fast forward to now, you're a successful snooker and golf punter and tipster. So which is the most profitable for you?
Golf. Golf is always the most profitable, but it's always the most violent variance you can have. But that's basically because I do things slightly different on the golf. I tend to work a market backwards by looking at, I work backwards from the 1,000 to 1 shots, down, 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 profiling them players because it's easier to theorise a 500 to 1 shot should be 100 to 1 than it is to theorise an 8 to 1 shot should be 6 to 1. And if you do a lot of digging, you can, but that means high variance. So, you know, if you deciding, you know, to back a few 300 to 1 shots, 500 to 1 shots, they're often going to run that at their price. And obviously I don't back just them, but I do always include them in my perm. And so I kind of have a place model that balances that variance on the golf, where I'm back in top 20 market, top 10, top 5. And that keeps that variance somewhat level. And although both suffer it. And then snooker in comparison. So snooker is mainly, unless you play, I do play the outright market. I play outright, anti-post. I've had some really good touches for myself and members. But mainly you've got matches which is lower prices, and that does keep variance down. And so you can more have a solid grind of making like, a little bit of profit and keep moving forward. But I think over lifetime, so I've been doing it 5 years, and I think I've got well over 3,000 bets on the snooker. And they're running at 16 to 17% ROI. Now my golf, I've got like 3,000 golf outright, 3,000 golf place, just for circa figures in that time. And the golf place runs at 25%, the golf outright runs at 44%, and that's settled at Bet365. So if you're betting it on an exchange price, unless it's been hammered down by the tipsters, 80% of the time on an exchange one, you're going to get minimum 20% more. Sometimes you get 100% more even. So, you know, you can't get that on any other sport. You really can't get a situation where a 100 to 1 golfer has got a really realistic chance. You know, you might have tissued him somewhere 40 to 1 or less, and, you know, he's got a very realistic chance. And, you know, they're quite, I wouldn't say easy to find, but, you know, if you know what you're looking for, course form. So when I played snooker, you'd think course form don't matter in snooker. Snooker tables 12x6. Every time they're the same. But what I learned was that when I was travelling back to one of the places I played well at previously, and I always played well at Prestatyn, Pontins, that on the buses place, loads of players didn't. I liked it, having a few beers every week. I probably coped with not being able to practice. There was no practice tables. And I made the final there 3 or 4 times. 4 times, I think, with the professional one I got to. And it was huge fields. And I realised then, and then of course when I turned pro, there were certain venues you liked, Guildhall for me, but Norbreck Castle I hated. And when you're travelling back, starts that week, you're already starting to get a little bit tense in yourself. So snooker and golf are hand-to-eye coordination games, high hand-to-eye coordination games. So golf, I was a single-figure player as a lad because my dad was a scratch golfer. And so when I was playing snooker, you had a situation where to play your best, you had to be really in a good tranquil kind of space. They say space nowadays. Really a bit of inner peace. And you only ever really found that when you went back to somewhere where you had good positive memories. So, you know, when people say course experience in golf is massive. You know, because not only do you have that, but you have the fact that the course fits your game, your eye, your shape of shot. You know, so, but don't just look for the professional course experience. Lots of these courses have junior tournaments, amateur tournaments. You know, you can find your players in there if you dig enough. And so you do have more information than the bookmaker if you want to dig. And, you know, you can find some real clever angles. You know, when the player, you know, they're going to be perfectly suited. They may have played well in junior tournaments 15 years ago. And now they're playing as a pro. First time they've gone back there, you know, or second time. You know, and people don't look at them, but...
Are we talking just golf and snooker and golf? Is it?
Snooker, so I use the theory in snooker. I mean, you see it in snooker all the time. Ding Junhui has been absolutely awful for about 5 years, but he won the UK Championship at the Barbican in 18 or 19, and he made the final this year. And the rest of the time, he hasn't made a quarter final in. And so in that 5 years, there's been another 80 tournaments that he's entered. And so on them certain weeks, certain players, you know, and you get it very much in snooker, the Crucible is quite a very tight venue. I mean, I was lucky enough to play there myself in 91, and it is unbelievably small when you've got the two tables. And like now you've got Neil Robertson, he's really struggling to win there despite all his marvellous form over a season. And equally, you get players that love it, that generally their level goes up from the rest of the season. So venues is huge in snooker. People don't, even countries, you can even go to travelling to a country to a different venue will help a player. Take last year's Welsh Open, Joe Perry winning. His best tournament probably on the tour has been the Welsh Open, where he's been consistent for years. And when I was looking last year, he was playing well in the lead up. And I mean, I only took him in the quarter betting at 20 to 1, but he won at 80 or 100 to 1 for people. And, you know, it showed some real nice signs of form a week or two prior. And, you know, I'm a great believer that journey, travelling is quite exhausting for professional sportsmen. So if you're doing one you're quite relaxed in, that's half the battle.
Now, back in the 80s, we talked about it earlier, everyone knew Steve Davis.
Yeah.
Everybody knew Alex Higgins, people like Bill Werbeneck, they were all household names. These days, if you offered me $1,000, I couldn't give you one player.
Right.
So, am I just an exception to the rule? I mean, how popular is snooker these days? And does everybody price it up? Is it easy to get bets of any size on?
Well, I don't think snooker's as liquid as the days when I was playing. I think back in them days, Adrian Humphreys was doing the Racing Post articles. Yeah, back in them days, there wasn't the television channels. They were kind of little bit of rock stars in snooker. You were in the front pages of the papers all the time. Snooker's still popular. Barry Hearn did revive it. And, you know, with 20 tournaments, there's more people earning a living out of snooker now than there was in my day. But there's more sports for people, so people... And it's caused a problem in snooker. You've got no young players coming through because, you know, in my day, everyone wanted to play snooker. Nowadays, kids have got more choice. And, you know, it's not as popular, but Bet365 are hugely into it. Their compiler's excellent this last year. I mean, I've got to say, you know, he really does a good job. And people tend to follow him, the other firms. I think there was quite a funny one where he didn't do one tournament, and I think Betfair and Paddy Power tried to price it up, and it was a right mess. But
you took advantage of that, did you?
Yeah, well, some people did. I'd lost my all my accounts with them and people I used, so I couldn't. But I told members and people that could. You know, I mean, you had a situation where you were getting 6 to 4 about a guy that the week after was going off at 2s on when they'd set it up properly. And there was a couple of matches like that. So
is there a danger with what appears to be a bit of a niche sport that if you soon show your hand, if you're any good at it, and you lose your accounts?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, what's the longevity of it as a successful punter?
Well, for me, so I had a really, you know, betting it's like such a journey that I had 1 year, and probably my most profitable year in snooker punting was the lockdown. And they were playing at Milton Keynes, and the lads were playing like they were playing in practice. And the century break markets, they caught the Bet365 out, and everyone followed them, and it's like just like printing money for a few weeks. But of course, they got clever. They marked people's accounts, and nowadays I'm back to pretty much using money lines, handicaps, odd century break, few high breaks, because I don't want to saturate the smaller markets. Because the minute I do that, the bookmakers know. They just rejig the hot prices, because there's certain lines in snooker where they're going to the overs, betting to the overs, pushing people to the overs, when actually the unders is almost a generic bet. You know, you can almost make a 10% yield on certain lines. If you wanted to just bet them bland, you know, you'd soon lose your account. But of course, so, you know, the odd time I will give out like a no 50 break in the first frame, which is a market. Certain matchups have players who are quite a lot of respect for each other. So the first frame is always that bit more tense than the rest. They're always feeling each other out. If they don't make an early visit, and that no 50 first frame can be priced at 9-4, when actually between them two players it's an even money shot.
Is the fact that you've played at the top level an edge for you in itself, because you understand little things like that you just mentioned?
Yeah.
That other people, you know, don't want to think about that at all, are they? So.
I think 80-90% of it is an edge. It can give me a bad bias. So the edge of it is that I can look at a player, see how they're playing position, see how relaxed they are, see if they're ducking the certain shots, the right shots, and that gives you a lot of tells that other people can't. They can't see that, you know, and so that is a definite edge. And the one bias I get quite badly is that I can think someone's going to be a poor player forever, and then I don't really give them credit once they start playing well sometimes. You know, they can be grinding for years and then suddenly find, you know, snooker's changed. So they're all older players now, and they all using shrinks. They're all got breathing techniques now. When I played, if you cleared up with 60 or 70, you were like that because you've been all the pressure building up. And nowadays, they go back to the chair, they've got a breathing technique, they can get themselves pretty calm within a few moments.
It used to be 8 pints, didn't it?
Well, that's it. I mean, Bill Werbenick, I mean, he was just addled. I mean, Bill at Norbreck Castle, I mean, the stories aren't an exaggeration. You know, you used to go into breakfast in the morning, he'd be sat in the lounge with his cans of Tennant Super. And you remember Tennant Super? I mean, that was Bill Werbenick. Yeah.